Welcome everyone, welcome from Tokyo. Bienvenidos a tout le monde, salutación a tous de Tokio. Bienvenidos a todos, saludos cordiales desde Tokyo. Prerico Bureau welcomes all our special speaker, observer, and participant from many countries of the world, from Africa, America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Our international seminar allowed to meet many people to open an important dialogue among culture on our cultural religion heritage. This is a very special day for us. We have 219 countries with 3-4 international speakers with important topic, and every abstract has been published in a book always available on the dedicated website of the seminar. Now, let me thank very much my president, Hae-un Ri from Korea, and my colleagues of Prerico International Scientific Committee for their support, our president, Teresa Patricio from Belgium for her special presence, and my colleague, Gabriel Caballero from Philippines, Director of Sustainable Development Goals Working Group of ICOMOS. I thank very much Ms. Celia and the Secretary at Prerico ICOMOS in Paris for all support that I received in these months during the organization of our seminar. I am appreciated this extraordinary collaboration very much, and I thank very much also my friend Sagara Yagaminge from Sri Lanka for his unconditional support. A special thanks to all speakers that today are connected from many latitudes of the world and was experience and project research all over this interesting intercultural meeting. Thank you so much to all again. And now I invite my president, Hae-un Ri, to open our seminar. Enjoy this meeting, and please use the chat to share your opinion or questions. I remember now that the main language of this intercultural meeting are English, French, and Spanish, but every PowerPoint presentation will be in English. I invite all speakers to respect the time. Thank you very much and enjoy this meeting. Thank you. Please, Hae-un, thank you.
Thank you, Olympia. Well, I should say good morning and good afternoon and good evening because I'm in the 8 o'clock p.m. and then probably American continent is all in the morning, and then the European countries during the day. On behalf of Prerico, I welcome all of you to join this webinar today. We lost our some friends and do not meet face-to-face over years already because of the COVID-19. Because of this, we could meet. Is it possible to, I can see my face there? I have no idea. Is it? Okay. Today's theme is reuse and the regenerations of the cultural religious heritage in the world comparison among cultures. Today, we have 25 case studies will be presented. I hope we can learn from each other and understand better for other cultures as well. Already Olympia mentions, but our president of ICOMOS International is Teresa Patrico, and then also Gabriel Caballero, with the focal point of Sustainable Development Goals, World Heritage Working Group, supported this webinar as well. And then also my special thanks to all three special guests, and then also a special thanks to the all organized this event possible, and especially thanks to the Olympia. You fly from Italy to the Japan, and then you made the great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haeun. Thank you. And now I invite our international president for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olympia, for the invitation to be here today. So good afternoon, everybody. Buenos dias, bonjour. So I'm really very proud to be here with you and to see that we have so many attendees. It's great from all over the world. So allow me to tell some words. So reuse and regeneration of the cultural heritage in the world is a topic of course, very great importance in the context of today's society, especially if we take into account the increasing threats that religious heritage and sacred places and associate communities are facing today in a daily basis. So one of the roles of ICOMOS, of course, is to promote the protection and safeguard of the heritage of the world, tangible and intangible, respecting human rights, beliefs, sacred places, holy sites of all communities of all over the world. But societies are evolving, and one of the roles of ICOMOS is also to pay attention to changes, to be able to promote resilient discourses and actions, to introduce guidance, to deal with reuse and regeneration, and I dare to say recovery, and consistent with environmental issues and sustainable development goals. Our colleague will speak about it after me. I think in this moment, I'm thinking of my own country, Belgium, where around 6,000 historical religious buildings need urgent maintenance, and many are closed and not anymore in use. The survival of many of these places of worship will necessarily depend on a redefinition of their community vocation together with their intrinsic values. In Belgium, new initiatives are being developed to put places of worship to other users, as we believe that an open and in-use place remain alive, and therefore it will certainly be better maintained and less vulnerable. To give you an example, for instance, the Church of St. Jacob in Bruges, that is a World Heritage Site, is occasionally being used as a study place for university students during their exams, because it provides a nice space, quiet and calm. So the values of historic religious buildings are particularly relevant when they characterize the values to which communities attribute identity and symbolic values. Therefore, there is a need to identify methodologies that combine approaches and techniques together with the complex dialogue of values generated by reuse, in which intrinsic values can play a powerful role in cultural religious heritage reuse strategies, enhancing social dynamism and taking into account economic challenges of urban and rural areas and regions. So the initiative of today, bringing together the voices and experience of our international experts and practitioners working in the field to share experiences and discuss challenges, it's a showcasing example, the proof that we are mobilized to develop contemporary, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable approaches for the safeguard and reuse of religious heritage. So I wish you everyone a very productive sharing of experience. And once again, thank you so much for inviting me here, inviting me today to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teresa, very much for your words, for your kind word, because for us very important this intercultural dialogue to open a new door for the future and for an important intercultural dialogue also between different international scientific committee in ICOMOS, because we have many important topics. We need to share these important topics among us. Thank you very much, thank you. And I communicated that the Italian President Maurizio Di Stefano apologized for not being able to attend this meeting for an expert work commitment. But now I have a video from Gabriel Caballero, because Gabriel had another meeting at the same time. And I wish you this video. One moment, please.
Dear colleagues, thank you for coming to this conference of Prerico, talking about the reuse and regeneration of religious heritage in the world. I believe my other colleagues in ICOMOS have already provided you with wonderful messages to welcome you in this global conference. As the focal point for the UN Sustainable Development Goals for ICOMOS, I see sites of religions and rituals as places of peace and cultural encounters for communities, groups, and individuals. It is also through these sites that people feel a sense of connection to things beyond themselves, to something immaterial and deeply spiritual. These sites are also places where people find a sense of place, gives value to life, and strengthens our mental and emotional health. Places of ritual are places where traditional cultures connect nature and culture, leading to the understanding of deep connections to our land and waters, personified in deities and divine spirits that bring balance to our world. However, sacred sites also sometimes bring divisions among people and cultures. I do hope that we allow for openness in our discussions, and these sites become places that remove gaps among people, reducing inequalities and providing gender equality for all. I do hope that these conversations that you have here today strengthens our collective understanding that every type of heritage gives value to our discourse on sustainable development. Thank you and great discussions to all.
Now we start this international seminar, and I invite for this first session my friend from Puerto Rico, Milagros Flores, ICOMOS Puerto Rico, ICOMOS ICOFORT, and Milagros will speak in Spanish with a presentation in English. Thank you so much, Milagros. Bienvenidas, Milagro. Muchas gracias y adelante. Muchas gracias.
Buenos días a todos. I'm speaking in Spanish since my presentation is in English. Bajo el título Con la espada y la cruz, esta presentación hablará sobre la espiritualidad en las fortificaciones coloniales españolas, estudio de caso de San Juan de Puerto Rico, como un ejemplo de que aún en un lugar de guerra puede estar presente la espiritualidad. Las relaciones entre España y América se iniciaron por la región del Caribe a partir del 12 de octubre de 1492 por Cristóbal Colón. A partir de ese momento, España utilizó las Antillas Mayores del Caribe, Cuba, Santo Domingo y Puerto Rico, como base de sus empresas de exploración, colonización y comercio de los recursos del Nuevo Mundo. Esas riquezas pronto fueron igualmente codiciadas por las demás naciones europeas, entre ellas Inglaterra, Francia y Holanda. las cuales comenzaron a asediar los nuevos territorios españoles con similares intenciones de lucro. Entonces, España se ve en la necesidad de proteger sus nuevos territorios en América, tanto las riquezas materiales así como las espirituales, estableciéndose desde ese momento el que ejército y religión serán dos realidades presentes en el Nuevo Mundo. España, como recurso de protección de las flotas llenas de riquezas que procedían de sus nuevos territorios, de los continuos ataques de sus enemigos, se dio a la tarea de construir lo que constituyó el primer sistema de defensas de América localizado en el Caribe, siendo la ciudad de San Juan de Puerto Rico uno de esos puertos claves de ese primer sistema defensivo. Algunos de los principales aspectos de la espiritualidad del catolicismo español que destaca en la ciudad de San Juan de Puerto Rico son la presencia de las antiguas capillas en los dos principales castillos de la ciudad, que fueron los espacios de devoción y realización de los ritos de la Iglesia Católica, como la misa, la comunión y la confesión. Estas capillas estaban bajo la responsabilidad del capellán, que igualmente era parte de la guarnición. Hoy día permanecen en ellas obras de arte religioso, entre las que destaca en el Castillo San Felipe del Morro la pintura de gran formato de la Virgen del Buen Aire, venerada como patrona de los navegantes. Esta imagen será mostrada más adelante en esta presentación. También destaca la imagen escultórica de Santa Bárbara en la capilla del Castillo de San Cristóbal. Santa Bárbara es venerada en la Iglesia Católica como la patrona de los artilleros e ingenieros de minas. De ahí que los depósitos de pólvora en todas las fortificaciones españolas también se le conoce como la Santa Bárbara del Castillo. Cabe mencionar que el culto moderno a Santa Bárbara ha variado. Si bien fue introducido por la monarquía hispánica, es curioso que con el paso del tiempo, hoy en día es una práctica popular de los practicantes de religiones afrocaribeñas, el ofrecer platos de comida, frutas y flores a la escultura de Santa Bárbara que se exhibe en el Castillo de San Cristóbal el día 4 de diciembre, que es el día de Santa Bárbara. Esta práctica es respetada por la administración del castillo, hago la salvedad. Pero esta práctica no responde a su tradición católica tradicional, sino a una costumbre popular que responde al sincretismo religioso afrocaribeño, originado por esclavos africanos traídos al Caribe durante el periodo colonial de España en América, que duró del 1492 al 1898. Y los que tenían prohibido practicar sus religiones africanas, que eran consideradas paganas por la Iglesia Católica. Entonces, para continuar con sus prácticas religiosas, sincretizaron sus deidades africanas con los santos católicos, y de ahí Santa Bárbara, que en la religión católica se asocia con el rayo y explosivos, a través del sincretismo religioso afrocaribeño llega a tomar la forma de la deidad africana de Changó, el dios de la guerra, del rayo, el trueno y el fuego. Y así ha sido transmitido en la práctica popular hasta el día de hoy. También destaca en las imágenes inferiores la aparición de la primera cofradía como parte del proceso evangelizador de la isla, en el caso de San Juan de Puerto Rico, la cofradía de la Virgen de Belén, el cual está asociado con el asedio inglés a manos de Sir Ralph Abercrombie, al que fue sometida la isla de Puerto Rico en el año 1797, y durante el cual el obispo de la ciudad ordenó a los ciudadanos realizar procesiones de oración por la ciudad, pidiendo protección a la Virgen de Belén ante el enemigo que la asediaba. Las procesiones se efectuaban de noche y en las que se llevaba en procesión la imagen de la Virgen de Belén. Cuenta la leyenda que cuando el invasor inglés en la oscuridad de la noche, al ver los cientos de luces de antorchas moverse por la ciudad, pensó que era un ejército de 11.000 hombres con antorchas y asustado por la imponente cantidad de lo que creía eran soldados, decidió retirarse de la ciudad. Hecho que se ha inmortalizado en la ciudad mediante una escultura denominada las 11.000 vírgenes. Y también se recrea aquí todos los años durante el mes de abril por la Cofradía de la Virgen de Belén, que aún existe, en conmemoración de la victoria de la ciudad de San Juan sobre el asedio inglés del 1797. Por último, para concluir, ha quedado la religiosidad también plasmada en las monumentales murallas coloniales que bordean la ciudad, a lo largo de todo el cinturón de bastiones que encierran el centro histórico de la ciudad antigua. Sus impresionantes, vemos aquí, sus impresionantes estructuras defensivas, además de llevar nombres de reyes y gobernadores, en ellas también destacarán las advocaciones religiosas de santos de la Iglesia Católica. Ejemplos de ellos son el castillo San Cristóbal, destacándose el cinturón monumental de murallas que bordean la ciudad, este que vemos aquí, donde cada bastión lleva como nombre la advocación de un santo. Vemos aquí San Sebastián, Santo Tomás, Santo Domingo, Santa Rosa, San Antonio, San Fernando, Santa Elena, San Agustín, la Puerta de San Juan, Santa Catalina, San Justo, San Rafael, entre otros. En esta última imagen vemos sobre una vista aérea de la isleta de San Juan, esta que vemos aquí, separada del resto de la isla grande, donde se encuentra localizado el centro histórico, esta específica área que está aquí, y que aquí vemos la cadena de cinturón de murallas y bastiones que rodean ese centro histórico. Dos fuertes que se encuentran fuera, localizados extramuros del centro histórico de la ciudad de San Juan, pero que a su vez guardando y protegiendo las dos entradas principales de la bahía de la ciudad. Estos son el fuerte dedicado a la advocación de San Jerónimo y el fuerte dedicado a la advocación de San Juan de la Cruz, la entrada principal a la bahía de San Juan y la entrada posterior del Boquerón también daba comunicación a la bahía, que era el lugar de mayor protección durante la época colonial española contra ataques enemigos. También vemos en los dos recuadros a mano derecha las capillas que mencioné al principio de ambos castillos, donde se encuentra aquí a la derecha, la imagen a superior derecha, la imagen de la escultura de Santa Bárbara, y en la imagen inferior izquierda, la capilla del Castillo San Felipe del Morro, donde se encuentra la pintura de formato grande sobre la Virgen de los Navegantes. Una última mención y muy importante, y es que la ciudad en sí, la ciudad de San Juan, está igualmente bajo la advocación de un santo de la Iglesia Católica, San Juan Bautista, y su fiesta se celebra la noche del 24 de junio. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Milagros. Thank you so much, because very interesting for us to know in other experience, and so above all other countries, and other experience about cultural heritage and religious cultural heritage. Thank you so much. And we continue with Francesco Follo, Magister Francesco Follo, permanent observer at UNESCO. And I invite Monsignor Francesco Follo, please, to introduce your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, but I speak French.
Okay, very well.
Thank you, because io non hablo spagnolo.
It's perfect. French, English also. Very well. Thank you.
Yeah. So also Latin, but and Greek. So, but my speech is about the topics. But after we can speak about the other, because I have something to ask for my president interlocutor. But in this moment, I give you my speech in French. C'est pour moi un honneur de prendre la parole à ce webinaire et proposer des réflexions qui puissent permettre de mieux préserver et promouvoir le patrimoine culturel de l'UNESCO et en particulier les sites culturels à intérêt religieux. Ces sites méritent une attention particulière aussi pour ce qui concerne leur régénération et ou leur réutilisation. À ce sujet, il faut préserver le patrimoine culturel religieux, national et international, qui appartiennent à chacune des religions. Pour ce type de patrimoine, il faut créer des formes innovantes de valorisation et d'utilisation grâce à une étroite collaboration avec les organismes publics d'État, régionaux et municipaux. Ces actions contribuent de manière significative à l'objectif de millénaire sur l'éducation de nouvelles générations. C'est à elles, en effet, que ces racines culturelles religieuses donneront la sécurité d'un passé qui peut être la base du présent et la guide dans l'avenir. Pour cela, l'essentiel, parce que je ne parle pas qu'à titre personnel, j'ai aussi, c'est au nom du siège. Avant tout, il faut identifier clairement les biens culturels religieux, avec le but de les restaurer, les garder, les cataloguer, les défendre et de promouvoir de nouvelles initiatives avec eux. 2. Établir la philosophie des biens culturels qui en favorise une meilleure connaissance et une adéquate utilisation dans l'enseignement religieux, dans les célébrations des rites religieux, et dans une vraie fruition culturelle qui respecte le lieu sacré selon la mince, l'esprit des propres religions. Je pense à toutes les religions, hein? Pas que au catholicisme. 3. Favoriser une formation des artistes et des autres personnes concernées, architectes, etc., sur le contenu théologique, liturgique, iconographique des lieux sacrés pour promouvoir une collaboration entre le monde de l'art et le monde religieux qui aboutissent à la valorisation complète des lieux à intérêt religieux, temples, synagogues, églises. Organiser de manière institutionnelle la coopération entre les responsables civils et religieux, sans oublier les propriétaires et les affectataires. Les biens culturels religieux, non seulement pour ses valeurs culturelles ou historiques intrinsèques, mais aussi pour sa signification purement religieuse, cultuelle, actuelle ou même historique. Par conséquent, le bien culturel est doté de valeurs religieuses qui, même dans la grande catégorie unitaire des biens culturels à laquelle ils appartiennent, ils confèrent une physionomie particulière méritant une discipline et une protection spécifique. Si, de nos jours, le bien culturel religieux a sa propre vie religieuse opérationnelle en tant qu'objet de culte ou au service du culte des fidèles, ou en tout cas, il constitue un meuble ou un complément à un monument, il est nécessaire que la protection s'étend également à ses composantes. Presque tous les patrimoines culturels religieux ont conservé et conservent encore au fil du temps leur fonction originelle en vue de leur origine. En définitive, ces sites culturels sont, et peuvent l'être davantage, des ponts entre différents pays et peuples en favorisant une culture de la rencontre dans la paix grâce à leur référence à la transcendance de Dieu qui est source de fraternité. Le siège soutient toute initiative visant à promouvoir la culture et les biens qu'elle produit, afin que la vie personnelle et sociale puisse s'épanouir dans le bien, le vrai et le beau. Il s'agit d'aider à préserver la mémoire historique, à transmettre aux nouvelles générations avec éléments qui ont façonné l'identité d'un peuple, d'une nation et qui portent avec soi une composante d'harmonie, de beauté et de sens de la vérité capable d'ennoblir et de grandir chaque homme et chaque femme dans leur propre humanité intégrale. Le pape François a souligné ça assez souvent. Donc, l'approche que l'on devrait avoir vers le patrimoine culturel ne consiste pas seulement dans la conservation d'une œuvre d'art en tant que porteuse de beauté, mais aussi surtout dans le mettre en relief la signification et la valeur religieuse culturelle des différents éléments qui font partie d'un site, son identité culturelle, la rencontre avec la communauté à laquelle ils appartiennent en les situant dans leur contexte architectural, géographique et urbanistique. Donc, protéger le patrimoine culturel, c'est garantir un dialogue inclusif, une rencontre permanente avec la communauté afin de favoriser une véritable régénération dans le respect des valeurs du bien à protéger. Pour ce qui concerne les églises, les synagogues, les mosquées et les temples, je ne comprends pas les questions de fortification. Là, c'est notre question, mais on ouvrira les débats, si on veut. On touche les sites à intérêt culturel et intérêt religieux. La restauration et la reconstruction d'un lieu de culte, mais aussi de tous les biens d'intérêt religieux protégés par l'UNESCO, implique de reconstituer l'origine de l'œuvre. Si on ne connaît pas l'origine et le but, on se trompe. La valeur de la significance est une priorité qui prend en compte les besoins du culte et les pratiques qui y sont liées et qui doivent continuer à s'exercer. Donc, il est crucial de comprendre la signification d'un site culturel à intérêt religieux. Dans un lieu de culte, d'une part, il y a la vie religieuse et les formes dans lesquelles il s'exprime. D'autre part, il y a une dimension qu'on peut appeler culturelle qui forme et qui est ouverte à tout le monde. Et c'est vraiment un lieu de la rencontre. En effet, la forme conserve et transmet la beauté. Et mon idée, prise par un architecte de grande valeur italienne, Cesare Brandi, qui est un théoricien de la restauration, il disait, et je suis d'accord avec lui, que si on retire la dimension religieuse d'un site qu'elle avait, on baisse sa beauté. Par conséquent, ce qu'on souhaite, c'est que le lieu du culte soit laissé aux croyants, aux non-croyants, à tout le monde donc, et aux générations futures, conformément aux principes selon lesquels la sauvegarde du patrimoine culturel, y compris sa fondamentale dimension religieuse, est une condition incontournable pour sa valorisation. Enfin, notre action doit avant tout viser à identifier les différentes formes de destruction des lieux de culte et à analyser leurs causes. Seule la connaissance des raisons du contexte et des intentions des processus de destruction du patrimoine religieux nous permet de définir les responsabilités à court, moyen et long terme et de développer et mettre en œuvre des stratégies de protection durable. L'objectif est donc de développer des stratégies de prévention et de résolution des conflits qui reposent sur l'intégration du patrimoine culturel en général dans une stratégie globale de développement humain, suivant également le droit international humanitaire, conventionnel et coutumier. J'ai fait des abrégés pour ne pas vous ennuyer beaucoup. I hope you understood me, but after I think we have time to have a dialogue with the question.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And for any questions and for any observation, please share your opinion on the chat. Okay, thank you very much. And now we have a problem, a technical problem with the next speaker from India, Professor Rana Singh, but we wait for you in the next time. And we now continue with Samida Ulsakar. Samida?
Yeah, can you hear me correctly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me just share the screen.
Okay. After Samida, because Rana Singh joined us.
Oh, so should I continue or?
Now you and after Rana, okay? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Sure. Okay, good afternoon all. First of all, I would like to thank ICOMOS PRERICO and of course Olympia for giving me a chance to speak here at such an early age. Today I will be speaking about the need of ethical guidelines in community-based conservation consultations of living religious heritage sites with an Indian perspective. But before I start presenting, I would just like to make a small note just to clarify that when I'm speaking about the living religious heritage site, what I mean by the living aspect of it is the continuity of the site's original religious function and the continuity of its core communities. So starting with the basics, I will just try to introduce you to the basic concepts that are involved in community involvement. As we all know, the community involvement aspects come under the stakeholder engagement and stakeholder management process, which is a cyclical process, and the communities are involved in various stages of the conservation process. It can be at planning process, project control process, or project delivery. But unfortunately, what we see in most cases is that community consultations are involved mostly while deciding the heritage value of a certain heritage object or that site. So in a way, we are not using its full potential and full utilization of communities' opinions in deciding what needs to be conserved and how it needs to be conserved, because they also, coming from a religious community, they also have some opinions or the traditions that can help us understand their side of the conservation as well. So with this, I think that new ethical codes and new ethical guidelines can help us understand and utilize that. So just to give you an idea of the existing code of ethics, these are some of the documents that are already available and which are followed widely by the heritage professionals. But sadly, there are no documents discussing ethical codes in conservation decision making of particularly living heritage or religious living heritage. And moreover, none of them focus on the community consultations. So there is definitely a need of a new framework on ethical guidelines that focus on these particular points. But before we make these guidelines, we need to understand what is happening exactly in this entire process of making the guidelines. And there are four main aspects, not all, of course, but there are four main aspects that I would like to talk about. First is culture and heritage. Second is responsibility. Third is risk and harm. And fourth is conflict of interest. Now, as we all know, culture and heritage are interconnected, but the intangible heritage aspect becomes way significant when it comes to living religious heritage sites. And most of them concern with oral traditions, expressions, performing arts, social practices, rituals, festive events, knowledge, practices, and their relation with nature and universe, all the philosophical aspects of it, and of course the traditional craftsmanship that is related to making the object, to make or restoring the material aspect of the heritage, you can say. And then we can easily divide these living religious heritage sites into 4 aspects. First is sacred spaces of worship, which are entirely the heritage sites who have the significant value in religious aspect. Second is emblematic sacred spaces. Now, these are the kind of spaces that are not originally religious to start with, but maybe they have a certain religious aspect or certain object that is related to religion, which is symbolic in a way, and that itself makes the space very sacred. Third is sacred places of communal value. Now, these places can be historic or not, but the most significant part of it comes from its communal and traditional and social value. And the fourth one that we see most as heritage professionals is monumental sacred spaces, which are the spaces where even if we take out the religious aspect of that place, still it is monumental on variety of heritage values. And all these 4 typologies have one thing in common, which is the socio-religious value associated with the material aspect of heritage, which is the tangible. That means the intangible aspects that we discussed earlier and tangible aspects come together in religious living heritage sites. And to conserve these types, living heritage approach that is ongoing for at least a decade now can be very useful, where the community involvement aspect can be present in intangible heritage as well as tangible heritage conservation, where community can talk about their ways, their opinions on how even the tangible heritage conservation can be done. Second is the responsibility. In this, identifying the stakeholders is one of the biggest responsibilities that I think ethical codes can put their lights on, you can say. Existing code of ethics don't explicitly classify any categories or groups to be more important, even though their involvement is frequently defined as an essential factor. And after that, the 3 components, the 3 main questions come into existence. First is the valid claim. Which community or which group has the valid claim on a particular religious site? Then if they have the valid claim, then should we provide them with a special status? And if we are to provide them a special status, then should they be given a selective consultation method? Just to give an example, let us consider the Trans-Himalayan Buddhist monasteries. In those kind of monasteries, the valid claim would go to the Buddhist communities that live around that area, or the Buddhist monk or monastic management that looks after the monastery, or the craftsman who looks after the traditional restoration of the materials that are used for worship. Now, if these communities or these stakeholder groups are given the special status, then what about the other groups? And if they are already given the special status, then should we think about the selective consultations? Because in general, when a heritage conservation takes place, the stakeholders each have their own representatives. But when it comes to living religious heritage sites, considering how the religion or the religious aspect of it, how it is sensitive, I believe that each one of the individual in every single community would have their own opinion or own voice of what they think how it should take place, considering their values, considering their traditions, and etc. So can the selective consultations take place in this kind of conservation process? That needs to be addressed in ethical codes as well. Then the third part is harm and risk. According to K. Palazzo, harm to interest may occur in conservation, not only by direct intervention on material, but also on a conceptual level as well. And this is very much truth regarding the religious heritage sites as well, because harm to religious objects or values is directly communal damage. And this is due to main 2 reasons. First is extreme directives against any changes of traditional practices. We all know that each religion or each religious text have certain directives against any changes into the traditional practices or rituals that take place, or even the maintenance of the materials that have have been used for worshipping. So if the heritage professionals make some changes scientifically to those objects or to those values, then these kind of extreme directives can be used by the communities to form a debate of certain kind. And the second part is fear of adverse effects or loss of belongingness among local communities. Now in rural areas, this problem is the most, because in rural areas, the local communities associate themselves a little, you can say a little too much with the religious heritage that is surrounding that area. And not just that, but if they have the fear of God or the fear of going against these traditional practices, then there is a possibility of loss of belongingness as well, because they think that after the conservation process takes place, the object that is conserved is not the exact object. So the material authenticity comes into debate as well. And to avoid these kind of risk and harm, collective and inclusive decision making can be a big answer. Then the fourth part is conflict of interest. Now, there are multiple reasons of conflict of interest, but one of the main ones are lack of knowledge, misinterpretation, and sometimes even the incompetence of stakeholders to manage the sites. Now, what I mean by lack of knowledge is not just on one particular side, but on the both sides, on communities as well as on the heritage professionals. Because as heritage professionals, there is a possibility that we are assigned to a project which we are not familiar with. Or a religious heritage site which we are not familiar with. So at that time, we wouldn't have all the knowledge that there is regarding the communal or social or traditional value of that area. And communities that are already residing, or the core communities that are representing this heritage, can help us understand what the situation is. And same thing applies to the communities as well, because most of the time communities don't have the technical or the scientific knowledge that goes into the conservation process. So in this way, heritage professionals can help them understand this as well, and avoid the problems that are caused by lack of knowledge. Then second is misinterpretation. Misinterpretation causes mostly because, considering how sensitive the religious aspect of the heritage is, there is a possibility that sometimes heritage professionals, while explaining something scientific to the communities, can say some things which the communities won't understand, or they would take it in a wrong way, in a way that they would harm their feelings as well. So that is something that needs to be taken care of. So maybe ethical guidelines can write something or guides heritage professionals about something like that. Then the third and again the most common problem is sometimes the stakeholders are incompetent when it comes to managing the sites. Of course, considering that there might be a possibility that there is a existing management body by the core community which already manages the site, but they don't have the technical knowledge that comes into heritage management. And as heritage professionals, we can help them understand how the sites are managed in the first place. And all of this can be avoided if we have shared learning and decision-making initiatives. Now, I have already talked about the decision-making initiative or decision-making policies, but shared learning is something that we can come up with. Already there are many organizations who organize workshops for shared learning experiences. And in this, what we can do is, as heritage professionals, we can make them understand the technicalities, even in a layman language, we can say, and the communities can help us understand their values, their traditions, their morals, and even their religious texts in some cases, to better the conservation process that is already being done. And with this, an inclusive people-centered heritage conservation approach can be born while incorporating traditional repair and renewal methods suggested by the communities with contemporary conservation practices that are done by us conservation professionals, as well as promoting community stewardship in deciding what and how to preserve the material heritage specifically. And with all this, my research can conclude that, of course, there is a need of a new framework of ethical guidelines focused on issues of community engagement in conservation decision-making of living religious heritage sites that specifically acknowledge the interest of religious and traditional management bodies and learning centers for traditional arts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Samira. Thank you so much, because many things of your presentation are published also in the last document in the resolution 20 published in ICOMOS in December, last December. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I invite Andrea Longhi, professor at Politecnico di Torino and ICOMOS Italian member. Thank you so much, Andrea. Welcome.
Okay. Okay, could you see my presentation? Is
Yes.
right? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So I will talk about how in the secularized Western world, the abandonment, the commissioning, and underuse of historical religious heritage are all phenomena that lead to critical reflection, but also increasingly stimulate conscious regeneration projects. The complexity of these phenomena, however, requires a clear approach by both the ecclesial communities involved and the scientific community of the world of conservation and design. The main risk is that a generic call to common values will continue to be unrealistic or rhetorical and merely appeasing. Conversely, the dramatic nature of the subject calls for rigorous assessment and selection criteria, the ability to make decisions, including painful ones. Heritage communities will be able to discuss and design a future for their religious properties only if they share languages and methods of discernment, avoiding euphemism. As a theoretical contribution to the debate, a taxonomy of values is proposed here as a summary of some recent studies on the history of Italian Catholic cultural heritage. The possibility of attributing specific names to values will allow a positive interaction between community discernment and scholar expertise, applying analytical assessment tools. Some statements of significance have already been experimented in different countries. This contribution intends to examine in depth some aspect of significance from the point of view of the relationship between architectural history, collective memory, and society. The historical analysis proposed here focuses mainly on the social dimension of the processes of heritagization, the formative processes of architecture, and the community-based perception of the sense of liturgical space. So this taxonomy of 15 different values is proposed because they are morphogenetic ecclesial values, values that shape the spaces of life and celebration. They help define the study of past transformation, but also the design of planned and future transformation and decision-making process. This historical process-oriented approach leads to the consideration of every transformation, both historical and future, not as a fracture or a unique event, but as an additional, innovative, and creative step incorporated in a long and continuous process of adaptation and resilience. The order of values presented here starts from the founding gestures, the gathering of the community for the liturgical celebration, and extends to the anthropological and theological dimensions, progressing further to the territory, understood as a space for the apostolate, witness, dialogue, and social engagement. So first, the liturgical value. The transformation of rites determines the temporary nature of the arrangements of the celebration, in which the self-perception and self-representation of the ecclesial community are reflected. Second, the value of a sacramental spirituality. Churches reflect not only liturgical, we can say, topographies, the altar, the amber, but also specific sensitivities and devotional practices related to the sacraments. Third, devotional value. Every local community identifies historically and temporarily different hierarchies of veneration of the saints or specific declination of Christological and Marian devotion. Then topographic spiritual memorial value. We could say it also like hierophanic value. Because usually some places have been the setting of prodigious events, hagiographic episodes, and testimonies of faith, making them crucial to the architectural and landscape design of the churches. But then also civil memorial value. Churches can be shrines of civil memories, war, disasters, and private dynastic memories in an exchange of personal memories and collective narratives. Then also sacramental memorial value. The shared memory of the social sacraments, baptism, confirmation, marriage, roots the community identity, extending beyond the value of the sacrament itself. Then a more global symbolic value. Every building materializes an ecclesiological vision, but also symbolic, allegorical, and metaphorical instances expressed by the theological culture of architecture. Then aesthetic value. Changes in the aesthetics and figurative culture, and even just personal taste of the patrons play a significant role in the transformation of liturgical arrangement. Then a multisensory value, we can say. Churches have always been polymaterial places designed for voices, words, and music. Vision, lights, stained glass, scent, perfumes, and touch. We can consider the ephemeral textiles used in scenarios characterized by rich gestures and an unconceptualized performative quality that emphasizes corporeality. Then heterotopic value. The community dimension highlights the values of hospitality and domesticity. The vertical, transcendent dimension emphasizes instead the value of extraneity with respect to ordinary life, of otherness with respect to any other collective space. Then the cosmologic and the naturalistic value. The reference to a sacral dimension of creation has influenced the sense of orientation, sunlight, and the relationship with natural context. Now we are arriving to landscape value. Every place of Christian worship fits consciously into its context, be it urban or rural, understood as a polysemic system of tangible and intangible elements. A more general relational value, social relations and path involve the community in both a secular dimension, markets, civic space around churches, and religious processions, public worships. Solidarity value, space for worship also reflect the practical exercise of humanization and the practice of charity, justice, and social promotion. But finally, it would be naive to underestimate one last element, the economic value, in the balance between the costs necessary to build and keep adequate spaces, the criteria of durability, sustainability, maintenance, and the potential to produce new value and new values. So finally, in conclusion, the theoretical discussion and practical testing of this taxonomy lends itself to two uses. It can become the basis for an informed assessment and historical analysis of underused or decommissioned historic buildings, historic churches, but also a methodological guideline for the study of functions appropriate for regeneration. Not all functions are appropriate, of course. So in order, therefore, to develop a common vocabulary and a shared research, we can imagine that comparative tests can be scheduled on a number of case studies in which a shared pathway between scientific communities, heritage communities, and religious communities can be tested and validated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Very interesting, because we need to open a new perspective also in this intercultural path about our intercultural religious heritage. Thank you so much. And I am sure that your presentation very interesting for, it is very interesting for all observer and participant. Thank you so much.
Your
and
disposal.
Now, thank you. And now I invite our member, our friend Rana Singh from India to introduce your presentation. Rana, please.
Can you see my slides?
Rana, the volume of your audio, do you control?
Can you listen my?
Now it's perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I am simply going to present before you in a very short term when we are talking about the religious sites in Hinduism and the Asian links. So this is mostly based on practical observation, living in the same situation, interacting with the people. So other parties already just now discussed all this theoretical construction, taxonomical frame, hierarchical levels, where you can put all this. So you are free to put all these, whatever context maybe, and maybe that taxonomy we can use to classify and prepare the whole chart for the Indian context. Okay, why I am trying to link this Hindu system with Asia, to just simply give you this lesson that it is linked to the Silk Route. That is at least going to be the 2nd century BC when it was perfectly developed. And now thanks to UNESCO that it has already been inscribed in their list. And they have already full plan to develop a particular route as a model to understand the historical perspective of the human civilization that is started linked from Korea, Japan, and going into even Israel, this whole. So in the map, you can see all these links are all together. Now, the thing is here, one has to be very conscious. The moment we say Hindu, naturally, this is the very late construction of this whole philosophic term. Early Buddhists and then later on and throughout the world, it is propagated. We are not much concerned about the whole philosophy and this critical political thing. We are saying that dharma. It is just like the Buddhist concept of dharma. And the basic meaning is the whole earth you can feel as a mother in your heart. The way you behave, that is called dharma. And this way, this whole Asian context, and one typical example is like Silk Route. Here is whatever our colleague from India already presented the thing. I am giving you the practical example. The latest one, what is that? There are altogether 38 heritage sites as inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage List. In that, there are 8 sites that are to be called as religious. You have to know in Indian context, according to our law, there is nothing like word religious. It is more theoretical academic construction, but in legal terms, there is nothing like religious. The word they use in a very crude, simple way is spiritual, but that is not even spiritual due to that legal. We are not concerned about that legality. We are concerned more about the practical things, how it is going to be. So here in the map, you can see the red spots. So out of 38, 20, it is about 21%, means 8 are related to religious. Why we are saying religious? They are related part to the particular sect, group, or monastery, and they have maintained at least since last 1200 years of the tradition of religious activities there. And that's how they have maintained the institutional system to maintain it and try to harmonize the people, try to maintain the cultural tradition. So whatever they refer like intangible cultural heritage. In Indian term, we say this is neutral. Intangible, tangible, it is in between. In India, no one can define in the real term. Outside you can say, but in real term you can say this is exactly only intangible or tangible. So we say it is in between. Always you can see the two sides, just like in 8 cases. The same thing, the latest, just in May, the last month, 48 tentative sites of India has been now enlisted in the UNESCO tentative list. Out of that, we find again 9 sites are related to the religious sites, what we are discussing, that how they can link with the good messages to the world. Now, the third category will be the Hindu sites related to Southeast Asia. There are 5 in the UNESCO list, and they are maintaining all these type of philosophic context, ethical values, norms, or just now before me, colleague, Italian colleague has already discussed that. So that we are trying to first let us document in a way that how we are going to put all these to give the Asian perspective. So this is the typical example. Now coming to the idea, this is very, you can say, very short and just flash. It is nothing like this, the whole book you can say like this. Earlier we were talking like International Union for Conservation of Resources. They have tried to put a concept, sacred religious sites. This is defined by the international board. That idea we have taken to how to link with the cultural value, what myself and Olympia are discussing together for our volumes. So here, let me cite one quotation. Famous writer Philip Geoff Capra. Science does not need mysticism, and mysticism does not need science, but humans need both. So we have to make a balance. We have to always open some ground that where others can also say, here is the thing. And those days, the one we are talking about Kipling's 1930s poem, East is East, West is West. So I wrote another poem, East is West and West is East. They all meet together. This is the real globalization. So we have to link like this. This is just giving a theoretical model for that purpose. And the term has been utilized already by psychologists, American psychologist Deveron. That is called broad term is heritage ecology. Just now you have heard the different category and heritage values. Here is a tree, the tree of the living are, so all science together going to be linked together in this way. Understanding cultural significance in a very broad term. Information on the value of the heritage, just now you have already heard. Conservation in response to religiosity and spirituality. The spirituality never can be put on a direct line. It is a sense of deeper awakening of yourself. It is deeper human values which can't be discussed only on the line. So we have to link these sides with that perspective. And then we can say these are the symbols of cultural responsibility, cultural heritage, and religious, not in a conservative term or English term. We have to use here the Buddhist term like dharma. That to be used, and then we can try to say that this is the way we can develop to reach the final goal of this. So let me conclude like this. Let us think of a global ethic that means a fundamental consensus on binding values, irrevocable standards, and personal attitude. Let us make bridges. Think cosmically, see globally, behave regionally, and act locally, but insightfully. This is an appeal for cosmic vision, global humanization, and self-realization. Let us hope we will have the sense to seek, the wisdom to listen, and the patience to learn. So this is the way it started from Indian context, going to the Asian context, then South Asian part, then Northern Asian part. And this way we are trying to work together, myself and Olympia, that how ECLA should do this work to the common masses to link the whole world. And we say the last word, I have to say, based on our Vedic tradition, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. What is the last aim of our life? We have to realize the whole world is a family. If we can make this through all these approaches, that will be a great contribution of our understanding and real action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you very much for your contribution. Very interesting. And now I invite my friend from Spain, because Esteban, we realized a presentation in Spanish. And Esteban.
Sí, muchas gracias. Thank you very much. We are very happy to participate in this webinar, but I will begin to our presentation in Spanish.
Okay, thank you. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Esteban. Muchas gracias. Adelante.
Un segundo. Okay. Toda arquitectura es una actividad social en sus orígenes, en sus métodos y en sus objetivos. Pero también es una actividad artística que a través de la excelencia de sus formas intenta mejorar las condiciones de vida de sus usuarios. La tensión que se produce entre la utilidad social que reclama el comitente y la voluntad de arte del arquitecto es fuente de conflictos y de oportunidades. Esto se puede comprobar de manera sencilla en la arquitectura religiosa. Nuestra investigación se propone visualizar la gran arquitectura católica construida en América Latina desde los comienzos del siglo XX hasta nuestros días, entendiendo esta tarea, tal como ha afirmado Monseñor Folo u otros panelistas esta mañana, como el primer paso para conocer la historia de cada proyecto y de su construcción, sus vínculos con la geografía del país y con las sociedades que los vieron levantarse, así como el proceso que sus arquitectos siguieron desde su ideación hasta su materialización definitiva. Entendemos que la gran arquitectura es la que supone una gran inversión económica, ocupa una gran extensión de terreno y tiene un gran impacto en la sociedad. Normalmente estas tres características van unidas. Desde un punto de vista tipológico, la gran arquitectura religiosa son las catedrales, los santuarios de peregrinación y los monasterios. Como saben, toda catedral es la iglesia principal de una circunscripción eclesiástica, la sede de su obispo, el lugar propio para algunas celebraciones litúrgicas y el edificio que representa a la comunidad en el espacio público. Por eso desde antiguo se ha denominado iglesia madre. Existe un tópico que afirma que en nuestros días ya no se construyen catedrales. Nada más lejos de la realidad. De hecho, es posible que durante el siglo XX se hayan levantado más que en los 19 siglos anteriores. En la actualidad existen 758 circunscripciones eclesiásticas en Latinoamérica. De entre ellas, más de la mitad cuentan con catedrales que se comenzaron a construir durante el siglo XX o el XXI. Tenemos así alrededor de 400 catedrales por identificar. Entre ellas son muy pocas las que han sido publicadas. Brasilia, Managua, Río de Janeiro, Chillán, las que tienen en la imagen. ¿Qué ha ocurrido con las demás? La distribución de estos edificios no es homogénea dentro del ámbito de estudio. Así, en algunos países apenas se han construido catedrales durante el siglo XX, en tanto que en otros lo han sido prácticamente todas. Esto tiene que ver con diversas causas, pero sobre todo con el proceso de colonización de nuevas tierras que se ha desplegado a lo largo del siglo XX en muchos países. Por eso, y también por otros motivos, decidimos en su momento comenzar nuestro trabajo por Chile. Las fuentes documentales que tenemos a nuestra disposición son escasas. no es este un tema que hasta ahora haya suscitado el interés de la crítica especializada. El único estudio general sobre arquitectura religiosa contemporánea en Latinoamérica lo dirigió Fernando Pérez Oyarzún, precisamente en la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, hace más de 20 años. Los trabajos se interrumpieron a finales de los años 90 tras la publicación de varios artículos, en una fase inicial de su desarrollo. Y no tenemos noticias de que se hayan continuado. Somos conscientes de que el patrimonio del siglo XX todavía está en vías de catalogación. Sin embargo, las actuales condiciones de acceso a la información nos permiten utilizar recursos que hasta hace poco eran inexistentes, como los sitios web dedicados a la conservación del patrimonio cultural, tanto del Estado como de la Iglesia Católica, en nuestro caso, o de diversas organizaciones internacionales, UNESCO, ICOMOS, etc. Además, cada país latinoamericano suele contar con una nómina de monumentos nacionales, donde aparecen algunas catedrales construidas durante el siglo XX. Por otra parte, ahora es fácil conocer el número de diócesis que tiene un país, y entre ellas, de una u otra manera, siempre existe una página web informativa. Eruditos locales, estudiantes, viajeros, etc., añaden informaciones interesantes. Nuestra propuesta tiene una doble vertiente, teórica, como creación de conocimiento, y aplicada, entendiendo que este conocimiento constituye una herramienta estratégica para desarrollar políticas de tutela del patrimonio cultural de origen eclesiástico. Por supuesto, nos proponemos transferir los conocimientos adquiridos a los actores implicados en el proceso de diseño, construcción y conservación de los espacios de culto: arquitectos, comitentes, profesionales de la construcción, comunidades y divulgadores sociales. Se trata, en definitiva, de concienciar a la sociedad y a las nuevas generaciones del valor patrimonial que puede tener la arquitectura religiosa contemporánea. Nuestro objetivo inmediato se limita a visualizar la gran arquitectura religiosa contemporánea, elaborando una base de datos completa que subsane la deficiente historiografía relativa al conocimiento de las catedrales latinoamericanas, construidas durante el siglo XX. Pero a medio plazo nos proponemos objetivos más ambiciosos. Contextualizar política, social y económicamente los edificios estudiados, analizando el ambiente cultural y tecnológico de cada país y su incidencia en la actividad edificatoria. Analizar el trabajo de las comisiones diocesanas de arte sacro, las comisiones nacionales de patrimonio y similares, con el objeto de determinar los criterios que esas instituciones utilizaron en su actividad curatorial, así como el trabajo de los arquitectos relacionados con ellas. Y realizar una primera valoración crítica de los edificios, que pueda servir para proponer acciones de tutela y conservación de aquellos que presenten un mayor interés arquitectónico, histórico y patrimonial. Muchas gracias por su atención. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Esteban. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much for your share, for sharing your presentation with us in this intercultural seminar. And now we start the second part of our international seminar. Because this seminar is organized in 3 parts, and the second part is dedicated to national law recommendation and legal procedures. And now we start with an interesting presentation from Portugal. And I invite our friend Rolando Bolzone and Soria Genin from ICOMOS Portugal to share his presentation. Thank you, Rolando. Thank you, Soraya. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to share the presentation as soon as possible. Okay. So, can you see the presentation? Yes?
Yeah. No. I now see. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay. So hello, everyone. First of all, many thanks to the organizing committee for accepting the contribution that me and Professor Soraya Jenan prepared for you. We'll present just a brief communication entitled Legacy of Franciscan Conventual Settlements in Portugal, overview of their adaptive reuse along the last decades. So this communication focuses on the very preliminary results of our participation into the project Atlas, Franciscan Landscapes, the observance between Italy, Portugal, and Spain. This is a JPI Cultural Heritage Program with funding from the Horizon 2020 and started in July of 2020. As suggested by the title, the project aims to study the Franciscan observance network in order to define an atlas of documentation and knowledge as basis for future activities of conservation, protection, and of course, reuse of this scattered cultural heritage. The whole consortium responds to an integrated approach between history, Universidade Católica Portuguesa, architecture, ISCTE-UL, computing science, Universidade de Estudi de Firenze, the project leader, digital humanities, Universidade Barcelona, with 5 associated partners, among these ICOMOS Portugal. The project is structured into 8 main work packages, displayed here at right, with 3 different moments in order to create, organize, and share the knowledge. So with the census of the case studies and historical and archival research, to safeguard cultural heritage resources through digital surveys, architectural and environmental analysis, and finally, to connect people with cultural heritage, guaranteeing a universal access through virtual museums and apps, 3D digital prototyping, and cultural routes. Religious orders represent, of course, a long-standing phenomenon with a strong impact on the political, social, and cultural spheres. The legacy of St. Francis of Assisi characterized the European and global culture and still survives through his rules, texts, the architecture, and of course, the surrounding landscape. Recent studies point to the foundation of 931 religious houses in Portugal along the centuries. Of these, 44% belong to the Franciscan orders when we consider all the branches. In this project, we focused, as said, just on the observance that are less studied when compared with other branches. In Portugal, we have identified 33 foundations since 1392. The first one are located in northern region, almost on the border with Spain, as you can see in map on the right side, and will be focused on these first 5 foundations. According to the degree of dissolution of religious orders, all religious houses were abolished, so their assets were secularized and incorporated into the national treasury. The male religious orders have to leave immediately the houses. The female ones could not admit novices, and their convents were suppressed just one the last nun dead. So the first abandonment of the settlements caused the loss of their symbolic meaning. So the places went from sacred to profane. They were abandoned or transformed into private residences, factories, police headquarters, and this led to a cultural loss in terms of architecture, landscape, but also of movable heritage, whose paths nowadays are very difficult to reconstruct. On the other hand, we have a disjunction of the ensemble forming complex conventual complexes, so the church and conventual dependencies with their enclosure. Of course, this forced to a separated analysis of these 2 components, the church displayed on the left side, the conventual dependencies on the right. Regarding the properties, we can see that both belong mostly to public owners. The analysis of the conservation state carried out through on-site visits, and when it was not possible through interviews with the owners, is based on 5 parameters, from the good state to the ruined and disappeared. The church in most of the cases is better protected and safeguarded when compared with conventual dependencies. It is relevant, for example, in the Convent of Santa Maria de Mostero, pictured down at left, in which we assist to a good conservation of the church, but the cloister is in ruin. However, we found cases in which both components are really well preserved, as in case of Sao Paulo do Monte, the picture in the middle. And finally, despite this romantic environment in which is involved, the Convent of San Francisco do Monte, the last picture, is of course in a ruinous state, with structure in a state of very advanced degradation. Of course, the state of conservation of built structures is strictly linked to their adaptive reuse or abandonment after the dissolution. Indeed, the conventual church is mostly maintained and still do their religious function, as visible in the pie chart and left, with 56% of cases. So we can assist to a continuity in the use of this area. Contrarily, in only one case, the conventual dependencies in the charter at right still have religious functions. This happened to the Convent of Sant'Antonio di Campomayor, that currently welcomes the Femal Order of Immaculada Concepção, visible in the first picture at left. Of course, this low percentage reflects the decline in the number of entrants to the religious life. An important percent of space seems devoted to the cultural functions. This data is very interesting because contradicts the tendency to think functions for tourism purposes. Above all, here there is an example of the Convent of San Francisco Monte Moro Novo, currently occupied by the Cultural Association of Art and Communication Oficinas do Convento, the picture in the middle. This is very interesting because it's a project that joins artistic residencies, sculpture, technology, and traditional construction. Finally, we have a significant percent of unoccupied spaces, mostly in conventual dependencies, with the 32% of cases. This would emerge from this analysis. An example is the ancient convent of Sant'Antonio de Castañera, visible in the last picture, with both the components completely unoccupied. Many times this is also linked to the ruinous state of conservation as seen in the previous chart, making these spaces, of course, unlivable. We detected also other functions such as residential, assistance, administrative, among others. We'll delve deeper the 5 Portuguese case studies displayed here. Their integrated study is very important to understand the origins of Franciscan observance in Portugal. These show different conservation states, from ruinous to good, looking from left to right, different adaptive reuse. In some cases, built structures are completely unoccupied. Through this multidisciplinary study, we carry out an in-depth analysis which can be at the basis of future activities of conservation, protection, and of course of reuse of some spaces. The project is in line with sustainable development goals. Indeed, cultural heritage, when it's carefully managed, can attract investments in tourism in a sustainable way, involving local communities, promoting a sustained and inclusive economic growth, attenuating social inequalities, mostly in rural territories. This case study shares a strong connection with landscape, and we will develop strategies for layered experiences to promote this space through cultural roots and digital virtual tools, connecting the case studies at national, but of course, at international level. Thank you so much. Here you can find our contact, and at the end, the page of the official page of the project, Atlas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rolando. Thank you so much. And thank you also, Soraya, for this important presentation. Very interesting because the result of the intercultural university in this, participating in this important project research. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now we go in Mexico, and I invite our member ICOMOS PRERICO, Raúl Rivero. Buenos días a ti, Raúl. Muy buenos días. Y imagino, pero que tú tienes tu presentación en inglés, ¿no? Ok, bien, thank you so much. And you start.
Buenos días. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Yo les voy a presentar algo sobre los criterios legales para el uso o reuso del patrimonio cultural religioso en México. En primer lugar, tenemos que platicar acerca de quién posee el patrimonio cultural religioso en México. Y esto se debe a que en México todos los bienes religiosos de cualquier religión, construidos o elaborados antes de 1992 son propiedad del gobierno federal. Eso en virtud de las leyes de reforma que surgieron a mediados del siglo XIX, hacia 1857. Incluso en México ha habido 2 guerras para que tratar de recuperar los bienes de la iglesia, o que en ese entonces era la única religión, era la Iglesia Católica, de manos del gobierno estatal. Y desde luego, tal vez el episodio más conocido al respecto en el conflicto entre los fieles y el gobierno mexicano fue la cristiada, que como pueden ver en las imágenes de la izquierda, pues numerosos sacerdotes, jóvenes y gente de todos los estratos sociales fueron asesinados por parte del gobierno federal. En la imagen de abajo pueden ver el ejemplo de la Catedral Histórica de Tabasco, que fue demolida en su totalidad por el régimen socialista de aquella época, ¿no? Y así numerosos templos fueron destruidos, y entonces hasta mediados del siglo XX era considerado una desgracia que el gobierno mexicano poseyera la propiedad de los templos y no las iglesias o tan siquiera los fieles, porque de esa manera el gobierno podía, como lo hizo, entregarle los templos a otras denominaciones religiosas sin importarle lo que pasara en ellos, podía hacer cualquier tipo de intervención o incluso podía venderlos a su antojo, como realmente ocurrió, de tal manera que hasta mediados del siglo XX era considerada una verdadera desventaja la situación legal de los inmuebles religiosos. Sin embargo, cuando entra la década de los 70 y llega la reforma litúrgica, pues ¿qué pasa? Que en México numerosos obispos cercanos a la teología de la liberación, con una manera de pensar de que había que renovar todo, o sea, renovar la iglesia implicaba renovar el interior de los templos, retiraron las obras de arte, algunas fueron enviadas a los museos, otras fueron destruidas, y eso obliga al gobierno mexicano a decir, oye, ¿qué está pasando? No puede ser que estemos perdiendo nuestras obras de arte y que las iglesias, resultado de 450 años en ese entonces de evangelización, estén perdiendo sus obras de arte. En ese sentido, el gobierno de México tuvo que implementar la Ley Federal de Zonas y Monumentos Arqueológicos, Artísticos, Históricos para prever el daño y decir, un momento, toda obra que se tenga que hacer en el interior de un templo tiene que ser supervisada y autorizada por parte del gobierno mexicano. De esa manera se intentó que los sacerdotes pudieran rediseñar los templos y las iglesias a su antojo, como había estado ocurriendo durante la década de los 70. En ese momento podemos decir que se convierte en una gran ventaja para poder preservar los templos. Y vemos en la imagen de la izquierda uno de los pocos que se mantuvieron sin modificar, y en cambio vemos en las imágenes de la derecha la Catedral de Sisoguichi en la Sierra Tarahumara, que fue remodelada en su totalidad, retirándole todas las obras de arte, o el templo parroquial de San Juan Bautista en Motul, donde, como ustedes pueden ver, también fue retirado todos los retablos, pinturas y esculturas de su interior. Incluso la propia imagen de la Virgen María, que era venerada, fue enviada al museo, como se puede ver a la derecha, junto con el pedazo del retablo en el cual estaba inserta. Pero también existe otra ventaja que es fundamental a la hora de hablar de la situación legal de los templos en México, y es que el gobierno federal, como posee los templos, pues también es responsable de su conservación, y en caso de desastres naturales como huracanes o terremotos, el gobierno mexicano se encarga de gestionar y en la gran mayoría de los casos de pagar la restauración de estos templos. 2017 fue un año que marcó a México por la gran cantidad de terremotos, y podemos ver, por ejemplo, el caso del Templo de Santo Domingo en San Cristóbal de las Casas, Chiapas, cerca de la frontera con Guatemala, cómo el templo, después de 3 años de intervenciones, ha logrado ser rescatado. Los plásticos que ustedes pueden ver en algunas de las imágenes en realidad están cubriendo retablos barrocos dorados de alto valor artístico. Entonces es importante. Pero también nótese cómo la gente, a pesar de que el templo estaba cerrado por las restauraciones, quería seguir yendo. Y es que se les facilitó que pudieran acercarse a seguir venerando sus imágenes, tratando de conservar las medidas de seguridad por parte de las autoridades. Entonces, para no excederme del tiempo, quisiera presentar como una especie de balance en el que podemos decir que la actual situación favorece principalmente al patrimonio cultural, porque obliga a los que lo utilizan, es decir, tanto a sacerdotes como a los fieles, a tener que pedir permiso antes de intervenir algunos espacios. Vemos en la imagen de la izquierda la Catedral de Yucatán. La Catedral de Yucatán tuvo dos destrucciones. Una fue en tiempos del régimen socialista, que destruyeron el retablo. Después inició la reconstrucción, y en tiempos de la reforma litúrgica volvió a destruirse todo lo que se estaba reconstruyendo para colocar solamente este Cristo, que es el Cristo bajo techo más grande de México. Sin embargo, aún así reconocemos que toda obra de arte del siglo XX también debe de ser conservada. Y algo que me parece importante es que, como yo les decía, toda obra de arte anterior a 1992, que es una fecha bastante cercana a nosotros, debe de ser supervisada por parte del gobierno de México. Esa es una ventaja. Sin embargo, no puedo dejar de decir que la promoción turística de estos inmuebles también ha ayudado a su conservación. Son los donativos en dólares y en euros de los extranjeros los que permiten que las iglesias de los pueblos, las iglesias que forman parte de los paisajes rurales, también puedan conservarse gracias a los ingresos extranjeros. Y un último punto que yo quisiera atender es que si los inmuebles están bien conservados, si los edificios se conservan, también el patrimonio inmaterial que ahí se conserva, incluyendo las celebraciones, las fiestas y todo tipo de rituales, también será conservado. De esta manera, podemos llegar a la conclusión de que el actual estatus de las propiedades religiosas, en las que tanto los edificios como las obras de arte que están en su interior son propiedad del gobierno mexicano, ha resultado bastante benéfico y ayuda a la conservación del patrimonio material y a la salvaguarda del patrimonio inmaterial, haciendo, como alguna vez dijo el Papa Emérito Benedicto XVI, que lo que para las generaciones anteriores era sagrado, también para nosotros permanezca sagrado y grande. Muchas gracias. Thank you, everybody.
Muchísimas gracias, Raúl. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much for your presentation. And now we go to all in another country, because this is important sharing among culture. We love to know different procedures and different legal problems. And for this reason, now I invite Merita Augustini from Republic of Kosovo. Merita? Merita?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to share.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Is it okay, Olivia?
Can you share your presentation?
Is it showing?
No.
Now? Is it okay?
Now, yes. Okay. Let's go.
Hello, everyone from Pristina. I will be talking today about religious monuments and sites in Kosovo, legal framework, approach, reuse, and regeneration. About the current legal framework in Kosovo in the field of cultural heritage, it consists from the law on cultural heritage, which entered into force in 2006, and its secondary acts. The law doesn't recognize religious monuments as a special category, but these monuments are further classified as architectural or archaeological category. According to this law, there are two types of protection, the temporary and the permanent protection. There are 280 religious monuments and sites under temporary protection, and for a period of 1 year, they have the same legal status as the monuments under permanent protection. The Kosovo Council for Cultural Heritage evaluates the proposals and decides which ones will gain the legal status of permanent protection. There are 8 religious monuments under permanent protection since 2013. One important law in the field of religious cultural heritage in Kosovo is the Law on Special Protective Zones, which entered into force in 2008. It protects 45 Orthodox monuments and sites, their buffer zones, and specifies forbidden and limited activities in these areas. It was initiated after the riots of 2004 in Kosovo, and it was also a part of the Ahtisaari comprehensive proposal for the Kosovo status settlement. There are also 4 religious medieval monuments in the UNESCO World Heritage List since 2004, and since 2006, they are in the list of World Heritage in Danger. All these religious monuments and sites, which are protected by the law on cultural heritage, belong to 3 major religions in Kosovo, Muslim, Orthodox, and Catholic. An interesting fact is that most of these buildings are still being used for religious rituals and ceremonies. So regeneration and reuse of these buildings is not so common in Kosovo. I will try to explain the latest trends and some community requests towards their religious monuments and the government's actions towards these requests. I will be showing 2 case studies. The first case study is about the reconstruction of the Mahmud Pasha Mosque within the archaeological sites of the Prizren Fortress. The Prizren Fortress is located on the east side of the city of Prizren, and it's an archaeological site under permanent protection since 2013. And it is one of the most eminent archaeological sites in Kosovo. The Prizren Fortress is a multi-layered archaeological site and dates back to the 5th century. During the rule of Ottoman Empire, the area within the fortified walls began to be built with various Ottoman buildings. The Mahmud Pasha Mosque, dating back to the 19th century, is assumed to be a reconstruction of an older mosque of the late 15th century. Its degradation started around 1912 and was gradually destroyed during 30s and 40s. Today, the mosque is in ruins. In 2017, Prizren Islamic Community made a request to reconstruct the mosque ruins and to be used later as a museum. The conservation project, which aimed this reconstruction with traditional techniques and materials directly on the ruins, was based mostly on assumptions about its facades, heights, materials, by comparing it to similar mosques built around the same time in the area. Few old black and white photos from far away, which confirmed the presence of the mosque within the fortified walls, were considered as an evidence for its reconstruction. The Kosovo Institute for Protection of Monuments, which is a subordinate institution of Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, and is the competent institution for granting permits and consents for conservation activities, after detailed analysis of the project, refused the request. The decision was based on the conservation principles and the legal framework. According to these principles and the law on cultural heritage, the complete reconstruction directly on the ruins in archaeological sites is not allowed, especially when most of the building structure will be reconstructed without sufficient scientific evidence about its original state. The reconstruction process, based only on assumptions, would cause loss of authenticity and integrity of the monument and the whole site. The second case study is quite the opposite of the first one. The second one is about the demolition of the church within the Catholic complex of Guardian Angel in Kosovo. The Church of Guardian Angel is a protected monument under temporary protection since 2016. The church is located in the city center of Perisai. It is built around 1927-29 by its own Catholic community, and it's the only Catholic church in the city. In 2017, the representative of the Catholic Diocese of Kosovo announced on a TV story their plans about demolishing the old church and building a new one. The explanation given was that it was unstable, it got old, it couldn't be restored, it represented risk for its users, and it lost its values. The information about demolition of the church became viral through social media. The Catholic community, but also many citizens from all around Kosovo, formed a group against demolition of the protected church. At the time, Kosovo Inspectorate for Cultural Heritage wasn't functional yet, so the Kosovo Institute for Protection of Monuments had to act fast. Its director drafted an official letter directed to the municipality of Perisai and the Catholic Diocese of Kosovo. The official letter reminded them that the Catholic complex is legally protected since 2016, and that any planned intervention should be addressed to the competent institution which grants permits for conservation activities. The institute also stated that according to the law on cultural heritage, demolition of the monument or site is forbidden, and explained legal consequences and penalties in case of such unauthorized actions. The Church of Guardian Angel was not demolished, and the Diocese of Kosovo prepared another project about restoring the church and not demolishing it. As for conclusion, the main recommendations that came out of this research paper are about enrichment of legal framework, of sub-legislative acts in the field of cultural heritage, such as enforcement of conservation principles laid out by international charters and conventions through introduction of new regulations and guidelines for the state of Kosovo. Regulation on licensing in the field of cultural heritage, about planning and implementation, which is not still finished, so it's an ongoing project. Enforcement of Cultural Heritage Inspectorate, which was founded only in 218. Professional advancement support by the government, and of course, awareness raising for cultural heritage and its common values among Kosovo communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Merita. Thank you so much. These legal procedures and these legal issues are very important in this historical period in many countries of the world, and I think this topic is very important for many scholars that in this moment work about this important issue. Thank you very much. And now I invite our friend from Saudi Arabia.
Yes. Good afternoon. Jamal? Yes, Jamal Ilayan, yes.
Thank you very much for your presence.
You are welcome. Can I make the share screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I speak about Waqf and old system of religion buildings conservation. In the beginning, I want to speak about what is the Waqf. The system of Waqf has 1,400 years old. In the original version, Waqf was the basic structure skeleton of the historic Islamic city construction. In general, the mosque was the first building built in the cities in the Islamic world. And it was the basic instrument for its conservation. We can see later how it was the basic instrument for its conservation. Traditional Waqf system definition and its basic rules. The Prophet Muhammad, peace on him, said in the definition of Waqf, conserve the original real property use the benefits. One of the most important rules of Waqf, it is a donation you cannot sell or free given or inherited. It is clear from this definition that Waqf real property will be conserved in the original state of donation, and there are the possibility to manage the administration and the benefits only. The nature of Waqf is forever. That means it needs protection, conservation, and restoration. Another important rule of Waqf is don't change or replace the real property of Waqf. That improves the capitalism stratifications and the historic stratifications in buildings and in cities. Next example, we can see Al-Azhar Mosque stratification and Al-Cairo city stratification illustrated this concept. In the Islamic city, you cannot see the stylistic war. The consecutive styles came in continuity and harmony. Buildings types of Waqf. There are many types of buildings. The most important, the mosque. No Islamic city stay without mosques, school and university. First schools and universities were built in the Islamic world as Waqf, library and hospital, and etc., etc. Until the 1925 in Turkey, 3/4 of the agricultural land was Waqf. Also in Tunis, 1/4 of the agricultural land was Waqf. All the above important buildings from the structural skeleton of the Islamic city, we can see that in the next figures. This is the example of Al-Azhar Mosque. We can see the original part with number 3, built by Fatimita in 9th century after Christus. This one, number 2, built in second period, in Ayyubite period. The last one is in Ottoman period, the entrance and the this number 4. These are the horizontal stratification, not replaced mosque in the same place of the other mosque. This concept of horizontal stratification, we can see it in the city also. The first city in Cairo, Fustat. After that, we have the Askar. After that, the Qata'i. In the last, it is Al-Cairo. There are 4 centuries to build these different parts of Cairo. You can see, we can see also the important role of the Waqf buildings in the city. In this red color, we can see the different buildings in the main streets in the city of Nablus. Same, we can see it in Khiva, in Uzbekistan. The main important buildings, schools, mosques, hospitals, and so are in black in the city of Khiva. Okay, what is the main transformation of the new concept of Waqf? Why the Islamic cities lost a lot of mosques and other religion buildings? After that, these cities lost their structural skeleton. The old administration of Waqf was in hand of donator or by him personal chosen with stable rules from Waqf. The new administration of Waqf is in hand of a public administration in General Ministry of Waqf. That means them actions are in relation of the administrations of the administrations. They can an example, sacrifice of Waqf buildings for open a new road. See, for example, Al-Firdaus Street in the number 2. You can see these buildings are Waqf, and after that they demolished to make this new road in the city of Cairo. Waqf destruction by different reasons in different Islamic regions. Sana'a, for example, number 1, demolished by Houthi political conflicts and the results demolishing of historic and Waqf buildings. Number 3, India, Assam, Babri Mosque, demolished by Hindus. Turkestan, number 4, other destruction, more than 8,000 mosques in the region. Destruction of Waqf buildings by conflicts. In the first image, Khalid ibn al-Walid Mosque in Damascus in Syria. Other, the 2 and 3 numbers in Baghdad, other demolitions of Waqf mosques and buildings. Number 4, an old mosque, very important, Umayyadi Mosque in Aleppo under attack. Same in Mosul, another attacks and another problems. What type of mitigation can we do to limit the negative effects of the new concept of Waqf? How can recover its function? In the religion buildings conservation, what is the function of the other conservation institution to help the Waqf to conserve the religion buildings? Results and recommendations. Stable a good part of the Waqf benefits for the conservation of the real property part of Waqf. The most important of these properties are the mosques. One important rule of the administration of Waqf, if the property needs any correction, it will be made with minimum change. It is similar to the important modern concept of conservation and restoration with minimum intervention. The effects of Waqf in the Islamic city is the conservation of the structural skeleton, the most important elements which influence the morphology of the city. It needs a new concept of management of the Waqf in basic of the traditional rules of Waqf with the new concept of protection and conservation. It is very important. It is very important to have in the new administration of Waqf sector specialized in the protection and conservation and restoration of the historic heritage of the Waqf. Thank you very much. Thank you for all of you.
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation about your experience in this African area, and I think very important all your suggestions about this topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And now we go again in Mexico. And I invite our friend Carlos Iriart with an interesting, important also topic, very actual in this moment. Please, Carlos. Carlos. Your audio is off.
Hello all. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to make my presentation in Spanish, and it's a pleasure to be with all of members of ICOMOS PRERICO and the many people from the world. I want to show you an example of one of the most beautiful religious heritage in Mexico, but this heritage was lost. La capilla del Señor Santiago en la comunidad de Orión, Michoacán, es un excepcional monumento representativo de la arquitectura religiosa del siglo XVII en México. Fue construida durante el proceso de evangelización de los asentamientos prehispánicos alrededor de 1639. Y bueno, era un patrimonio vernáculo con características excepcionales que fusionó los materiales y los sistemas de construcción, ¿sí?, con la mano de obra indígena, ¿sí?, y la práctica constructora de los evangelizadores. El techo interior de la capilla estaba diseñado, construido y decorado en forma de artesa invertida con mano de obra indígena. Y bueno, este techo era un patrimonio inmaterial. Sigue habiendo muchos ejemplos de esta arquitectura en esta región. Y era un patrimonio inmaterial, pues las tradiciones ancestrales fueron heredadas de padres a hijos para llevar a cabo esta arquitectura muy particular. El interior de la iglesia está decorada de forma elaborada, muy elaborada, con un estilo barroco mexicano. Y como les decía, es una combinación de carpintería mudéjar y un método de pintura prehispánica adaptado a las comunidades purépechas de la región. ¿Sí? Se conoce como la Capilla Sixtina de Michoacán, o la Capilla Sixtina de la región purépecha, y hubo diversos procesos de restauración del gobierno federal, quien es el responsable directo de la protección del patrimonio. Ya Raúl Rivero lo comentó, me encantó su presentación, pues me permitió no abundar mucho en temas del marco legal vigente, ¿sí? Y bueno, desde 1985, diversos periodos de restauración, hasta 1912 aproximadamente, que fue la última intervención, restauración pasiva, es decir, la conservación como tal, como el monumento aislado, y desde mi perspectiva no dinámica, visualizando los riesgos y el devenir de problemas que podía enfrentar este tipo de inmuebles. Esta es un poco la ubicación de la capilla. Sí, el valor mundial de este patrimonio son sus cielos historiados, además de toda su arquitectura. Está ubicada en México, el estado de Michoacán, y la región purépecha, que está muy cerca de Morelia, que es Patrimonio de la Humanidad. Y bueno, como pueden ver, está dentro de una ruta turística muy potente, ¿sí? Conocida como la ruta Don Vasco, muy importante en México, ¿sí? Y para el desarrollo, aparentemente para el desarrollo de las comunidades. Este es el valor del patrimonio en imágenes, bautisterio, tenía un bautisterio cubierto con una pila bautismal cubierta con una madera muy elaborada, pintura mural, un altar principal excepcional, y bueno, las vistas del coro y del sotocoro con sus cielos historiados, y este pequeño balcón de esquina soportado con una columna que era un ejemplo único de este tipo en México, ¿sí? Y estaba igualmente decorado con policromía pintada con pintura sobre canvas. El sotocoro, pues la imagen lo dice todo, y era un orgullo de Michoacán. ¿Qué sucedió? En marzo 7 del 2021, un fuego inició, ¿sí?, después de misa o al final de la misa, y destruyó totalmente el inmueble y sus valores patrimoniales. Los cielos historiados fueron perdidos. Bueno, pues estas son las imágenes que hay, una reconstrucción virtual. Estoy dando las citas de esta reconstrucción virtual de cómo quedó el templo, algunas imágenes, y en las cuales podemos observar, pues, más allá de las causas del incendio, la poca capacidad de respuesta que tuvo la comunidad en lo que llegaban los bomberos para atender el incendio. La foto inferior izquierda pues nos muestra los primitivos sistemas de respuesta para atender el incendio. Sí. Causas probables: un cortocircuito, fuegos pirotécnicos durante la fiesta, la temperatura exterior muy caliente, muy seca, y sobre todo un fuerte viento. ¿Qué encontramos en este proceso? Pues diversas lagunas, ¿sí? Diversas lagunas en el área para la gestión de este patrimonio. La región es una región marginada, ¿sí? Hay lagunas y deficiencias en los protocolos de respuesta. Debemos decirlo, yo lo comentaba de manera crítica propositiva, hay una negligencia institucional, nunca se pusieron de acuerdo las instituciones, Raúl lo comentó, si era la Comisión de Arte Sacro, la Iglesia Católica, el gobierno de Michoacán, la comunidad o el gobierno federal, que es el directamente responsable de su conservación, ¿sí? En qué hacer para atender a futuro estos riesgos. La ausencia de un plan de gestión inclusivo y de protección también ante el riesgo, y también, si bien está siendo promovida toda la región como una ruta turística muy potente a nivel mundial mexicano, ¿sí? Es una de las rutas turísticas más importantes de México, no hay una gestión integral entre conservación del patrimonio, marco legal y desarrollo del turismo. Les comentaba, la ruta Don Vasco es un incipiente recurso turístico, incipiente porque no llega el turismo. Digo, aún cuando estaba la capilla era muy incipiente. Parte de la ruta, Don Vasco fue el obispo que evangelizó Michoacán, un humanista, admirado a nivel nacional e internacional, ¿sí? Y bueno, además se soporta por todos los antecedentes prehispánicos de la región. Patrimonio histórico religioso muy fuerte, patrimonio arqueológico, etcétera. Y bueno, si bien tiene un sinnúmero de planes de gestión o de manejo, un plan estratégico, un plan de desarrollo territorial, una guía de viaje, la ruta, pues en la realidad no están operando. Yo cito un poco lo que comentó El País en relación con que la ruta, sí, era muy importante, y sin embargo, en una región como es lamentablemente Michoacán, y esta región purépecha muy marginada, está plagada de inseguridad, y bueno, los visitantes que pudieron ver esta capilla, pues la guardarán en su memoria, ¿sí? Los pocos visitantes que pudieron ver esta capilla la tendrán en su memoria, ¿sí? Al día de hoy solamente. Y bueno, la resiliencia como un proceso, no solo creo que se debe la propuesta es a partir de esta tragedia, de esta pérdida irreparable del patrimonio cultural de México, sí, hay que ser propositivo y ver a futuro, sí, y bueno, es un patrimonio religioso muy frágil. Hay que ser conscientes que es un patrimonio religioso muy frágil, ¿sí? Con responsabilidades muy confusas, Raúl lo dejó muy claro, en la cual hay contradicciones entre las políticas de planificación estratégica, desarrollo local, o sea, es sacar a la población de la marginación, ¿sí? Y conservación del patrimonio, ¿sí? Y pues esto habla de una desarticulación y una visión de largo aliento para la protección, una alta vulnerabilidad, ¿sí? Y bueno, la ausencia de protocolos de riesgo, ¿sí? Conflictos sociales, inseguridad y una falta de servicios turísticos adecuados. Tenemos el patrimonio como tal muy bien restaurado posiblemente, pero poco adaptado para que ese patrimonio contribuya al desarrollo local, ¿sí? Y bueno, esta sería un poco la propuesta. la reflexión a manera de conclusión, habrá que promover estrategias de resiliencia, la resiliencia como aprender del pasado, de un suceso y prevenir el futuro, ¿sí? Y reconocer que todavía prevalece un alto nivel de marginación e inseguridad de la zona purépecha es fundamental. O sea, no puede haber un producto turístico tan importante con una extensión tan grande si no reconocemos esto. O sea, no podemos negar la vista a esto, ¿sí? Identificar de manera permanente los riesgos naturales provocados por el hombre y los factores de incidencia e inseguridad. Es decir, ¿dónde están los equipos de prevención de riesgos en ese sentido? ¿Sí? Tener una evaluación sistemática de presiones y amenazas de estos sitios, sobre todo ese patrimonio religioso que está siendo promovido intensamente como recurso turístico, ¿sí? Y bueno, atenderlo de manera preventiva, no reactiva, o sea, no reaccionar cuando ya no tenemos oportunidad de conservarlo. Fortalecer el marco legal con normas que vinculen la protección del patrimonio cultural, la planificación del territorio cultural, ¿sí? Y la gestión responsable del turismo y el desarrollo de la comunidad. Es decir, todo transversalmente, no restaurar por restaurar y pensar que los turistas van a llegar solos, ¿sí? No, y la comunidad, suponer que la comunidad está preparada para enfrentar esto que vivimos, ¿sí? El ICOMOS mexicano hizo una alerta, una carta de alerta con muchas recomendaciones que la tendrán por conducto de Olimpia para los que la quieran, señalando todas estas deficiencias y todas estas preocupaciones, ¿sí? Junto con los miembros del ICOMOS Michoacán, ¿sí? Y bueno, esta es una tabla en la cual esta experiencia nos obliga a proponer un enfoque de protección, recuperación y prevención de riesgos del patrimonio religioso, en la cual se deba ver integralmente la conservación, ¿sí? De los sitios históricos, el turismo, el territorio y el patrimonio religioso que existe dentro de ellos para su actuación. Y también, bueno, identificar presiones, fortalecer el marco legal y sobre todo entender qué es el concepto de resiliencia por parte de las autoridades locales, ¿sí? De la propia comunidad, en su nivel para hacerlos partícipes y de los responsables de la conservación del patrimonio. Muchas gracias por su atención. Sí,
thank you so much, Carlos. Thank you so much, because now your presentation allows us to introduce another important topic about the fair connected of the cultural heritage. And now start our next section dedicated to the project, the experience realized on important cultural religious heritage. And for this reason, now I invite our friend Christopher Marion from United States for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, bonjour, buenos dias, good day, everyone, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. It is an honor to be here with you all today and an honor to be able to speak with you at this important event in relation to addressing fire challenges to further protect our cultural heritage, and especially very timely in following the fantastic presentation from Carlos and talking a bit about the fire at the Apostle Santiago Church in Nerio. In getting started, I would just like to basically touch on 4 points.
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. The first is just, fires continue to happen. From there, understanding what the issues are and what we can learn and how we can do better, and some thoughts in terms of keeping this simple as much as we can. As Carlos was talking about, we've heard about the recent fire at the Apostle Santiago Church. In recent years, we've had fires back in 2010 at the Kasubi tombs in Uganda, but even fast forwarding to the last couple of years, we're all well aware of the fire at Notre Dame, but also the Royal Chapel of Milot in Haiti, which is also a World Heritage Site. We had a fire. So we do continue to have fires even to this day. And I think in terms of going through and looking at all of these, I think there's so much more that we can understand and recurring themes that we see in these that can help us inform our decisions in going forward. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of these common threads that we typically see when we do some research in terms of some of these fires. So some of the things, and a lot of these again are probably fairly obvious, and we're not looking to prohibit them, but it's understanding where we may have hazards. Do we need to eliminate them? Do we need to manage them differently so that they don't become a fire hazard and create the devastation? A lot of religious facilities and sacred sites do have open flames. And again, we're not looking to say you can't have those, but how do we create that in a safe place and procedures and so forth so that they don't ignite other things? But it's again, recognizing that. Again, a lot of fires do start from electrical systems and older wiring, as well as lighting, and a lot of these high temperature halogen lights and so forth that get placed too close to combustibles. Appliances and cooking also are one of the more areas prone to causing ignition sources. Space heaters, use of multiple electrical cords and electrical systems that aren't sufficient to support that, or that they're put too close to combustible materials, and cooking at times in these facilities, or just heating things up for different functions that may happen are also ignition sources. We also need to look outside and not just, what's happening inside of potential ignition sources, but again, just being cognizant, is lightning a credible ignition source? And if so, how can we address that? As well as wildfires, and whether those are credible ignition sources. So understanding ignition sources is helpful. From there, looking at some of the different common themes, looking at combustible materials. Again, a lot of these are combustible, they're made of wood, and we're not looking to change that, but it's just, again, being cognizant of, a lot of combustible construction, a lot of combustible concealed spaces. Over years, we continue to incorporate more furnishings. We continue to store things at times in cellars and basements and attics, and these continue to increase over time. And what happens is these, obviously are fire hazards, but they also lead to longer duration fires and make it more difficult for emergency responders. So, do these all need to be accumulating in some of these sacred sites, historic sites, or can they be relocated elsewhere, or at least protected appropriately so that they don't become hazards?